I got an Erev Shabbos, Pashas Baha'altha, from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. I was thinking how last time I was here, we spent some time inside the palace of the king. What's fascinating is that the world now knows that Naftali Bennett is here today, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, to meet with MBZ, the Sheikh, to discuss world events, aka Iran, and so on. But what's so appropriate is, at least in my personal experience, Lahavdil Elif Alfei Havdalas, the closest I ever came to seeing what, in my mind, I would deem to be Malchus was my walk through the tremendous palace, which, as you can see, starts here and goes all the way through. And I was inspired by seeing that palace with the thoughts of what the Beis HaMikdash B'mheira B'yameinu She'yabana B'mheira B'yameinu might look like. The grandeur that I saw in that palace was simply tremendous. And that brings us to this week's parsha of Baha'altha. Baha'altha Saneros Amul Pnei and Menorah. So why does it say Baha'altha Saneros Amul Pnei Menorah? What is the idea of Mul Pnei Menorah, number one? And furthermore, if you expand on that question, why specifically did the Rebbeinu Shalom have to show of all the kelim of the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu, a menorah, a fire, and why did it have to be made miksha, which means from one solid hewn piece of gold, rather than having been assembled by multiple pieces? The branches, we know the menorah had multiple branches, yet the menorah had to be made in its entirety out of one piece. What's the reason for that? And I think that the answer is that the menorah is actually the representation, the kli that represented in the Beis HaMikdash the Torah HaKdosha itself. The Shulchan represents Parnasa, the Mizbeach is Mechaper, but ultimately, if you think about it, the representation in the Menorah HaKdosha of the Torah HaKdosha is unique of all the kelim in the Beis HaMikdash. So perhaps that's why the Rebbeinu Shalom had to show Moshe Rabbeinu, at Moshe Rabbeinu's insistence, what the Menorah HaKdosha should look like. And furthermore, not only what it should look like, but it had to be cast out of one hewn piece of gold. And the reason I believe is that Moshe Rabbeinu understood that as we sit here, Lefi Misparim, in the year 2022, Lefi Misparim, or in our count of 5,700 years since the Bria Ha'olam, and we're here 3,700 plus years past Maimed Har Sinai, which we just celebrated with Chag Shavuos last week. The same Torah HaKdosha that you and I can open up a Chumash and learn today, or learn with our children, is the same Torah that was given at Maimed Har Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu. And the only way to ensure that, as the Torah has gone through time, and as other faiths have evolved, there's Reform Judaism, there's Conservative Judaism, in order not to dilute the significance and the paramount importance of the Torah HaKdosha, Moshe Rabbeinu understood if you take an object and you throw it into time, as that object picks up speed and moves through time, ultimately, if it veers off course initially by a centimeter, after miles of its trajectory, it will be thousands of meters or perhaps thousands of miles off trajectory. You think about a rocket launching from NASA. If its initial launch is off a mere centimeter or two, then its ultimate target will never be reached. And therefore the Moshe Rabbeinu, our Rebbe for time immemorial, understood that the Torah HaKdosha had to be represented in a physical manifestation within the Beis HaMikdash, within the Mishkan, hewn out of one solid block. And not only that, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to make sure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him a menorah of fire, so that he would know exactly how to make that menorah to extreme perfection, so that not even a micromillimeter would be off from its initial measurements, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu had instructed it to be, because the Torah could never be diluted or never be changed. And the only reason that we are Zoicha to have the same Torah that we say, Moshe Emes v'Saras Emes, today, is because of the fact that the Torah Hakdosha was represented in its physical manifestation out of a hewn solid block, and that hewn solid block was shown directly to Moshe Rabbeinu by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that will never change. May it be the will of the Rabbanu Shalom that we are Zoicha to be Makabel the Torah in its original undiluted form, and to accept every facet of it, and to integrate that into our lives and the lives of our children, until we are Zoicha to be Makabel Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'mhera b'yameinu, B'Eretz Yisrael, B'Yerushalayim HaKodesh, Habnuya. Have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos.